I am very concerned about the rise of far-right politics. And I want to use my office as First Minister to work with other parliamentary parties who...
Reform?
Pardon?
Does that mean reform?
Yes, of course it does. Yes, of course it does, Colin.
F you, John Swinney. There's nothing far right about wanting to protect your borders. As is ever the case these days, the action that led to the shock endorsement of Nigel Farage and Reform UK by Dominic Cummings, the new Dark Lord of British politics, but unquestionably an election-winning evil genius, well, it all started on X. A punter asked Mr. Cummings, Dom, serious question, and I hope you reply. Who are you backing? Whether you agree or not as to who will be in number 10 at the next general election. And the man who helped deliver Brexit, the Tory takeover of the Red Wall, and then the downfall of his former ally Boris Johnson wrote quite simply, dunno yet, but obviously everyone should vote reform this spring. No downsides. Now that's quite a call, given the long-running feud between these two men. Farage told a documentary in 2020 of Cummings, I mean that horrible little nasty man who goes around calling Aaron Banks and I toxic. He's got to go. Dominic Cummings must go. And even just 6 months ago, this was Cummings' scathing own takedown of Farage.
It's sort of depressing, basically, I think, because Farage is basically like Tory MPs at heart. His goal is just to be on the Stupid Today programme on the BBC. You know, he's not actually there to get anything done. So he's there to kind of profit from people being upset with the system, but he doesn't have real answers for what to do. And he always surrounds himself with useless characters who can't build anything. So the party itself isn't really going anywhere. It tops out at like roughly 15%. There's 15% of the country, like pretty much like Farage, and hate everybody else. And he can get that 15% this year. He got 15% in 2015. But it can't. But it's never going to solve the actual problem.
But Cummings can now see the writing on the wall. His startup party is not going anywhere. And he sees himself as the man who could help reform become a professional governing force. Now, whether Farage sees any possibility of that is quite another thing, because right now, Reform UK is winning, with both the UK Prime Minister, Slippery Starmer, and the disgraceful Scottish First Minister John Swinney launching deranged attacks on him as Reform storms to the top of every national poll. So Swinney's far-right bombshell in just one moment. But first, let's get to Starmer. And this is how Farage responded to his Russian put-down last night.
Now, of course, the Prime Minister's thinking very hard about this meeting with Donald Trump, but he also seems to have me very much inside his brain. In fact, I said to him the answer or the cause of nearly all of his problems. Earlier on today, our own GB News' own political editor, Chris Hope, pointed out to the Prime Minister that the increases in defence spending and the timelines on to 3% in 2030 and the cuts in foreign aid, he pointed out helpfully to the Prime Minister that all of this was in Reform's contract with the people last June. Here was the PM's somewhat testy response.
Prime Minister Chris Hope from GB News. In July, Reform UK fought the election on a policy to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027 and 3% of GDP after 2030, funded by a £6 billion saving in the aid budget. Are you Nigel Farage in disguise?
Nigel Farage didn't even turn up to the debate in Parliament today. Nigel Farage is fawning over Putin. That's not patriotism. That is not what working people need.
Gosh, he does seem to be terribly upset. And this line, that I'm fawning over Putin, which is a complete and utter tosh in every level, but he's just going to keep putting this out.
What's clear is that Nigel is actually enjoying this situation.
But, you know, it is a fair point that you weren't there for this very significant meeting. He could have said, yes, we all agree across party that, you know, I mean, the Lib Dems have backed it. Even Kemi Badenoch backed it and then went off on some tangent about something else that she's cross about. I mean, there are ways of dealing with it. And I think one of the things is to not get riled and don't let people get...
Yes, I mean, whether I'd been there or not, I was actually meeting industry figures who were very concerned about what happens after April the 1st. Goodness knows what the job losses are going to... I mean, genuinely going to be... Everything from the care sector right the way through hospitality, you name it. But he did get upset, didn't he?
He really
didn't like it. He's really scared of me, isn't he?
Given how well Reform are doing in the polls, he should have actually responded in the opposite way. He should be, oh, Chris, stop, you flatterer. Because, I mean, the idea that this is going to sit well with an electorate who obviously very, you know, unhappy. He's talking about defence spending when the public are well aware that the army couldn't even fill Wembley Stadium. Yeah. And he's talking about you flattering Putin. I mean, the whole thing seems quite childish, actually.
And while Slippery Starmer hasn't yet used the irresponsible and completely untrue far-right label to describe Reform and Farage, today, the desperate Scottish First Minister John Swinney, head of the corrupt and failed SNP, long-time ally of the corrupt and failed Nicola Sturgeon, did go there in an extraordinary press conference that he hopes will sow division in Scotland to save his party's own despicable skin.
Reform, the rise of Reform, who are taking votes from all parties in council by-elections across the country. And when you talk about the politics of fear and despair, they're talking about the politics of frustration. But secondly, are you concerned what the Prime Minister is doing about cutting international development spending to invest in defence spending, and what that could mean, for example, for jobs in East Kilbride?
On the first part of your question, Colin, I am very concerned about the rise of far-right politics, and I want to use my office as First Minister to work with other parliamentary parties who...
Reform?
Pardon?
Does that mean reform?
Yes, of course it does. Yes, of course it does, Colin. And I want to work with other political parties to set out clearly and boldly to the public what we can agree on as the norms and the values of our society and how we can protect those, because I think they are under threat. I think they're under very, very vigorous threat from the politics of Farage. And I think there are clearly differences of opinion between myself and other political parties. Of course there are. But there is an overwhelming underpinning of common ground about the values that we hold dear, about our politics and our society. So I want to give the leadership to bring people in Scotland together, not just in a parliament.
F you, John Swinney. There's nothing far right about wanting to protect your borders, about wanting to stop the globalist takeover of our countries, and you are a shameful man for trying to divide your population in that way. You are the only danger. You are the only one sowing division in Scotland. Mark my words. And the fact that you went on to describe Farage as an apologist for and accomplice of the Russian regime, while refusing to say that tens of thousands of desperate Scots who are planning to vote for Reform at the next election are not far right, well, that just shows that you are a joke. You are a complete joke, and shame on you. Now, Dominic Cummings has had more to say in the afternoon about his Reform endorsement. So let me take you through this because it is really interesting. He says the prospects for a Tory Reform deal are much lower than many Tories assume. They underrate the extreme hate and distrust. Much of Reform feels like I do about how the Tories sabotaged the 2019 majority, how they ditched the promise of lowering immigration and deliberately engineered the highest ever from some of the worst places on earth, including the centres of the gang rape industry. And Farage has 30 years' experience of Tory MP lies and delusion and condescension. There will probably only be a merger if A, third force emerges as an independent power bloc, and B, Trump-Elon broker the deal of the three forces coming together. Without this, we face 8 years of the left wrecking the country. A key question is whether Reform try to and can turn themselves from a one-man band to an alternative government. And of course, he's making the point there, isn't he? That he's the man who can do it. And then what about Kemi Badenoch? What about Kemi Badenoch, who has just proven herself to be utterly appalling? I told you not to vote for her Tory party. I told you to go for Robert Jenrick. Today at PMQs, I'm not even going to show you because it was so bad. Here's what Dominic Cummings has to say about her. So many ways Kemi is a joke, but an important one is her utter cluelessness about voters. She thinks the Tories' 2021 to 2024 combo of record immigration, letting the NHS collapse, watching institution after institution crumble was because Number 10 was listening to focus groups too much. Anybody who thinks like this is simply an idiot. You can ignore everything else they say about politics. So that's where Cummings stands. And personally, and look, I know a lot of you are going to disagree with this, but you know, I'm an honest broker. Personally, I think Farage should listen to him. This guy knows something about winning elections, and Farage has to win an election to save the country. But in terms of Starmer and Swinney, let me just say that these sick attempts to wrongly brand those of us who know our country is being destroyed and simply want to secure our borders, branding us far right will not work anymore. We see through your bullshit now. We cannot be censored. And in an inspiring new address, Reform UK's Anne Widdecombe has made it clear that only a vote for reform will return free speech to our country. But first, you know how often I talk about the need for free speech to be protected. But I've been increasingly thinking lately of the need for personal protection from snoopers, bad actors, and hackers online. And I'm delighted to tell you that I now have a solution. And what's more, this VPN, or virtual private network, to use the full term, is also a life changer when it comes to providing you entertainment and information from anywhere in the world, wherever you are. Let me introduce you to Surfshark, an incredible and easy to use service that encrypts all your internet traffic, meaning your online activities stay safe so you can shop, stream, browse, and conduct your banking online in complete privacy. But the benefits of Surfshark go way beyond keeping you safe online, because it also allows you, this is what's great, to access your favorite entertainment, news shows, channels, streaming services like Hulu, iPlayer, HBO Max, and Peacock from anywhere. Or, and this is really handy, trust me, as a big fan of the likes of Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus, if one of your favorite shows is geo-blocked on that service, within seconds you can be watching as if you're in another country. If you're traveling for work or on holiday, you can also get all your favorite content from home, including sports. And this is an insurance policy, really, against creeping censorship in many countries. For example, France has blocked Rumble for many months now. So effectively, you can watch anything, anytime, anywhere. It's true freedom. And a VPN can save you money too, because did you know, I didn't know this until very recently, that websites often change their prices depending on where in the world you are buying from. So you can just test that out. Another real benefit of Surfshark is you have it available to use on unlimited devices, meaning your entire household can stay safe with just one subscription. There are over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries, meaning a world of choice is at your fingertips with 24/7 customer service if this is your first time using a VPN. So go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. Surfshark is so confident that it's the best VPN in the world that if you give it a try for a full 30 days and you're not entirely satisfied, you will get your money back. So surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price, or you can just click in the link in the description box below this video if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. But now, back to the show.
You will be able to say whatever you like. You will be... The only limitation will be that you mustn't actually incite violence, but if you have an opinion, it does not matter whether it is popular or unpopular. It does not matter whether it is right or wrong. It does not matter whether it is left or right. If it is your opinion, you should be able to utter it in a free society.
Yes, you should. Yes, you should. Thank you, Widdy. I'll take that positivity from Reform over these disgusting scare tactics from Slippery Starmer and Sturgeon's #1 ally any day. Now, Father Calvin Robinson. Father Calvin, great to have you here. It was only a matter of time, wasn't it, before one of the left-wing socialist leaders in the UK decided to brand Reform UK and Nigel Farage far right. John Swinney first up. What do you make of it?
I think they've been doing this for a long time, actually. They've been dropping hints that Reform are somehow far right. Now, I'm not the biggest supporter of Reform, as you know, but they're a long way from far right. I would say they're nowhere near conservative enough, actually. It's part of the problem I have with them. It's amazing to me that a left-wing communist politician can get up and call them that. But of course, it shows fear. Right, and this is what we're seeing at the moment. There's an increase in fear. Some of the clips you showed of Sir Keir Starmer showed the same kind of fear that Farage rightly pointed out, that our politicians are starting to realise that Reform is a genuine threat to their throne, to the uniparty of power. And it is a uniparty of power. Just today I was reading that Munira Mirza is being interviewed by the Labour Party to go and work for them after she's been working for the Conservative Party for however long, under Boris Johnson in particular. And all these people, these same Machiavellian figures. Sue Gray was another one, of course, that they don't care who they're working for as long as they're in power, because it's all about power. It's not actually about what's best for the country. It's not about ideas and policies. It's just about them looking after themselves and their own. And I think the British people are getting tired of it. And this is why Reform is becoming more of a threat. I do happen to think UKIP is becoming more of a threat too. And I agree with Dominic Cummings on a lot. Right up until COVID. He was fantastic over Brexit, not so much over COVID. But in his recent statements where he's saying things like, look, it will take a third party to broker this because there's too much bad blood between Reform and the Conservatives. I absolutely agree with him. And when he says, look, there will be another 7 to 8 years of left-wingers destroying our country. I've been saying this for a while on this show, that I don't think there's any chance of Reform winning the next election. I don't think there's much chance of the Conservatives winning the next election. I think Labour are in for another election cycle, unfortunately, which does mean more desecration of all the things that we know and love as a country. But it will take a third party. It will take a third party broker to come in and be the sensible middle ground. And I think that could be UKIP. I would hope that would be UKIP. Or I don't see any other alternative, really and truly. There has to be a return to common sense, Christian values, British values. There's only one Christian nationalist party in the United Kingdom, and that is the United Kingdom Independence Party.
See, where I disagree with you, Calvin, is I think there is absolutely no chance of a second Labour term. The question is going to be whether Reform can form a majority government or whether there's going to have to be a deal done with the Conservatives. Personally, I'd absolutely love to have UKIP in the mix too. You know, the more that we move the Overton window on the right, the more chance there is of real change, because that's what we need. And the problem is the Conservatives proved last time that they were just the uni party, really, just a globalist force in another name. Do you think Cummings, because look, I agree with you, he was appalling on COVID. The guy went utterly insane. But we know he can win elections. We know he's great at organising. We know he's great at bringing in talent to win elections. Should Farage get over himself and his previous Brexit wars and actually listen to the guy?
100%. It was one of the first things I said to Lawrence when he was forming the Reclaim Party. I was like, have a sit down with Dominic Cummings. Like, you don't have to work with him, but have a sit down with him, because this guy understands campaigning like nobody else in the country. If you want to win a campaign, he's the guy you call. And quite often he gets involved reluctantly. Unfortunately, he was quite aspergy with statistics and data, and not as empathetic and compassionate as a normal human being when it came to COVID. So he was looking at things in an authoritarian way, that was not helpful. But in getting Brexit done, in the Vote Leave campaign, he was instrumental. And in getting Boris elected, again, he was instrumental. And after that, the politics of Nadine Dorries's book, The Plot, goes into it far better than you or I could. But the fact of the matter is he knows his stuff. And so, I'm absolutely in agreement with him when he says, yes, Farage just wants to be on the Today programme. That's his thing. He wants to be the voice on the panel. He wants to be the person in the room. Again, this is what I've been saying on this show for so long. That's who Farage is. He's not a policy man. He's not a man who's going to fix the country. He may help get his party elected due to his popularity, but he is just a talking head. And so if Reform want to make a serious change, they need to look at who they are recruiting. They need to find some sensible people with sensible ideas to bring common sense back to the country, so that if they do somehow perform a miracle and win, whether it's a small majority or they become some kind of coalition government, then they'll be able to make an actual impact. Because this is the same problem the Conservatives will have, in that Kemi Badenoch, I like her as a person. She's a lovely person. But again, she doesn't have any policies. The Conservative Party aren't saying how they're going to fix the country, how they're going to return to normalcy. And so if they win, what will they do? Again, nothing. It'll be more of the same. The Labour Party have become really good at destroying things. And it's not just the current Labour Party. Tony Blair was great at destroying things. But the Conservatives, with the Lib Dems, spent 14 years just maintaining that destruction. We need a right-wing government that's willing to rebuild again. We have to rebuild our nation, and not in a build back better way, but in a restore to the greatness that we've always known and loved the United Kingdom to be.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.